To people you should know in the Microsoft Teams community. My name's Dan Ray. I work for myself as well as subcontract with a number of companies. And the whole idea of this presentation isn't about me, but about people you should know in the Microsoft Teams community. I have over 300 slides to get through, so we should probably get started right away. And I'm not kidding. There's 300 slides in this, 336 actually, in this slide deck. What's that? The transcription's related. Thank you, thank you. We're gonna see more of that. So as way of intros, my name's Dan Ray. I am joined by Stephen Rose. Stephen, let's throw you on the big screen here.
Howdy, everyone.
Hello. How many folks know Stephen? Show of hands. Okay, so this is the first person you should know in the Teams community. Stephen and I go back to the Chicago times that he came out to support me with the Chicago Windows User Group. And what Stephen did was talk about things that he was authorized to talk about with Windows futures, and I was not. As a Microsoft employee in the field, I didn't have the disclosure information, proper training, clearance, all that type of thing. And I got frustrated because my Windows user group wanted to know what was happening with Windows Next. And Stephen, I think that was like just a chance encounter, right? You reached out to me and said, hey.
Yeah, I said, I'm going to be in town. I've got some customer meetings, and hey, do you have any, do you want to meet up? Do you have any opportunities? And you're like, I have a user group meeting. I'm like, awesome, book me in. And not only were you generous to do that, you brought all my Chicago favorite foods, being a Chicago boy myself, which that's how you get in my good graces, is having beef sausage sandwiches, pizza, all the good stuff that I can't get here in Seattle. So
that's awesome. And besides Stephen, we have Lori Pottmeyer as somebody that you should know from the Teams community. How many folks know Lori? Hopefully you've met her this week. She's here in person. And she is another key person from my perspective in the Teams community. The next person, I can almost guarantee no one here has met, and that's Eva Ray. She's a super important person in the Microsoft Teams community because her company just went from WebEx to Microsoft Teams, and Eva is a people manager, and she realized, hey, this tool is new to my whole group, and I need somebody to teach us some tips and tricks. And so Eva reached out to me and she said, hey, would you be willing to get on the phone with my team and teach us some things that we might not know about Teams? And I said, I would be happy to, dear, because she's my wife. And then the other person that you need to know from the Teams community is Magdalena Freeman. Magdalena is in the back here. Magdalena, do you mind standing up? And she is really good with video and just very, very creative. So we worked together. Magdalena, I should mention, is also my niece. And we came out here a little bit early. And we scoured the internet for folks that we could bring in from a celebrity chef perspective. And being from Chicago, names like Stephanie Izzard from The Girl and the Goat came up. There are famous chefs in Chicago. The Chew on the Food Network. Jeff is from Chicago. There's lots of famous choices, but we settled on somebody internationally to join us. So here we go. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me. I have a special guest all the way from Sweden. We are joined by my good friend, the Swedish chef. Chef, thank you for joining us for our session on people you should know in the Teams community. We're highlighting people that have done special things with the ingredients of Teams. So that could be a meeting, that could be sharing PowerPoint, that could be collaborating on different information. And I really appreciate you taking some time to meet with us. Chef, I believe you're in the restroom. If you could either cut your video, or if you could maybe put the video in an appropriate spot in the room, that would be perfect. Could you either maybe zoom in again? Thank you so much. So that's our celebrity guest joining us. He's going to be right here in the room very, very soon. And Stephen, were you aware of the special guest? I don't remember if I gave you a heads up or not.
I was not. I'm completely at lost for words, but I'm a huge fan, and I love his meatballs.
Awesome. Well, Swedish Chef, thank you for joining us. I know you have a PowerPoint you'd like to share with the group. Can you go ahead and share that through Teams with us all? That would be awesome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we'll let the Swedish Chef kick things off here. Awesome. Cooking with Teams. Look at that. Hashtag cooking with Teams. So Swedish Chef really speaks Swedish. I don't know if he did that on the Muppets, but he's actually speaking in Swedish, and it's being translated to English real time by PowerPoint. This is one way as a trainer that I've thought about ways that I could offer multilingual without speaking a lick of Swedish, French, other languages. I know enough Spanish to be dangerous. I know how to say what, hello, goodbye, and how do you say in Spanish. So with those 4 phrases, I can attempt to carry on a conversation with my family in Spain. They're very disappointed in my 3 years in high school. Spanish has not stuck with me. So you can see that the translation isn't always 100%, but a lot of times it gets you at least close enough. When I went to visit my family in Spain, some of the younger generation, my generation, speak English as well as Spanish. And they might be a little rusty on the English, perfect in Spanish. I'm very rusty on the Spanish. I won't even say perfect in English. I haven't mastered one language. But the benefit to a lot of these applications we can run on our phone, when we were struggling with what is the word for something, we could go into these translation apps and do the translation to communicate to each other. The other thing from a Teams community perspective that you might want to be aware of is where to find people in the Teams community. There are tons of consultants that you could find in the Teams community. There are Microsoft certified trainers. How many folks here, besides Sherry Oswald, is a certified trainer? Anybody? Richard, you're in the consulting camp, I would assume?
Yeah.
Yes. User groups conferences. A lot of the attendees have a passion for Teams. That's why they attend. Microsoft employees, we've highlighted 2 so far, and we have a 3rd in the back who is Aaron Steele. Aaron, do you mind giving us a wave here? Awesome, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
And Aaron and I met in Chicago as well. I don't remember the story. I think we were up on the 31st floor and either ran into each other. Was it a user group meeting or?
No, it's probably Christy doing her Christy thing.
There you go, yes. Christy was one of my phone interviews before I went full-time at Microsoft, so she was probably just,
She's my boss.
yes, introducing you around. Christy's another person I could put in here who hasn't made the cut. The other thing is this list is 300 people plus. Do you think that's everybody you should know in the Teams community? This will never be complete. There's no way to say it's complete. Microsoft Tech Community. Lori has done a good job of pointing out that there's plenty of people you can connect to through the Teams community, techcommunity.microsoft.com. Stephen, is there an AKA for that?
I think it's aka.ms/techcommunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
If not, it's techcommunity.microsoft.com. It's
Right.
pretty easy.
Yep, absolutely. Microsoft partners. I have found plenty of cohorts in the partners that either help with the hardware, the back end of Teams, consultants. Their whole business might be Teams. It might be unified communications. So we have some examples of that. And then Teams encompasses all sorts of different expertise, whether that be development, administration, support desk, the people that are actually taking the calls from people using Teams. My wife's company is adopting Teams organization-wide. It's not just my wife's department. I used to work there, so I reached out to all my contacts to find out what they're going to do for Teams training. And that company's corporate culture was, we'll just give them some tools and they'll figure it out. Hence, my wife reached out to me to say, we could either just try to figure it out, or we could go to somebody who actually knows how to use this, and that's the approach we're going to take there. And then Microsoft Most Valuable Professionals. MVPs are a great resource in Office Apps and Services to kick off your connection into the Teams community. You can go to mvp.microsoft.com, and you can search either for the category, the country, names. I remember I met somebody named Joy, and I can't remember anything else about Joy. Her last name, where she's from, I can search for Joy. And if it's not a common first name or last name, and you spell it correctly, you find these people on that site. And then finally, LinkedIn contacts and searching. Most of these names, the first 100 plus, are people I've never met. I don't know, but I just did searches, or they commented on other things, and I realized, hey, you work for Logitech, or you work for Crestron, or you work for one of the other partners that I know focuses on Teams, so you're probably somebody that I want to get to know. And then Microsoft also has a service adoption specialist group that we built on LinkedIn after the Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist program was released on edX. And we are quickly approaching almost 500 members, including Stephen, some other people from Microsoft, people that have taken the Service Adoption Specialist course. And it's a public group, so you can search for Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist. You can request to join. We now have, I believe, 3 admins to the group to admit you. And it's just a place to collaborate. I met somebody that works for Crow. And Crow is a consulting management company. And one of the things this person brought to the group was, hey, I'm doing change and adoption management for our rollout. And how do I create that internal champions community? And basically head that up, or figure out how to bring them up to speed so they can assist and you can grow that understanding of Teams, that natural capability of having experts within your company. And Teams, as Joy mentioned in her previous presentation, is only about 4.5 years old. So this list, somebody pointed out to me, well, there's 300 on it, but there may be 200 that you need to remove at some point because they move on or they have a different focus or they're not Teams people you should know. I just had a friend who was a UC MVP for years on Skype, Link before that, OCS before that. We've known each other for 15 plus years. And Stephen, did you know Jeff Schertz?
I did.
Okay, well, I guess we still do, right?
Yes, he is still with us.
Yes. Did you see his news?
I did not.
Okay. He's going to Zoom. I would have put money on Microsoft.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
bastard.
Yes. So I was a little bummed to see that, but I was also pleased because Zoom has decided to start marketing their premise pass. And I thought, please tell me this is the premise to an idea that Zoom has. But no, they think premise means a location like the Renaissance Hotel. And if you have learned anything from this session, hopefully it's premise is your idea, premises is a location. And so I thought, please, tell me, somebody from marketing just, either decided we'll go with premise pass, and then they're going to put on premises with the hyphen in all the marketing materials, but lo and behold, on premise, on premise, on premise. Why do you think it's a problem? Because companies that specialize in this incorrectly use the term. And I'm one of those people that pick up habits from hearing. So whether it's the words I choose, whether it's just things that I don't even think about, unconscious habits, I have those embedded from listening to others. I got involved with Toastmasters because I realized I spend a lot of time with crutch words. How many crutch words have you heard me use so far? Ahs,
I don't think any.
so. The reason is because my brain is now thinking about what I am communicating and avoids those crutch words. For the most part, I still have moments where something goes wrong. Stephen, I don't know if you can see this, but I've stopped finishing this phrase because what could possibly go wrong, right? That's just tempting the demo gods in something going wrong with your presentation. So I have over 100 people in this slide deck that we're going to go through now that I don't even know, but I think you all should get to know them. Let's get started. Have you ever seen this? My first 100 slides you've already seen, or they're not important. We're pressed on time. I'm going to try to get to 101, and I'm just going to have the next button for the first 100 slides. Does anybody know the tip or trick in PowerPoint to correct that? Sherry? I'm thinking about you.
How many what?
I need to get to slide 112. Can you get me there quick?
F5?
F5. And then what do? I'm already in PowerPoint.
Then you type in the number.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. 112. Most people I talk to have no idea that exists. So now instead of sitting on the first slide in my presentation, even if I have a rough estimate, I'm sitting on 112. It looks like now I need to be on 113. But this slide has 90 people that I know from the Teams community, and it's built out instead of people feeling bad because, oh, I'm on the slide, but I'm number 237. I don't have to worry about that because I have a summary Zoom of all those 90 people that I know pretty well. Here's my wife, Eva Ray, R-E-Y. She works for Gallagher Bassett Services. She's been there over 25 years. She was the second employee to work from home. She's getting into Teams. She's a people manager. She runs implementation for Gallagher's largest customers. And even though Gallagher was still using WebEx, and I'd shake my head every time we'd get into one of those, hey, I can't do this, or how do you do that? And I'm like, I have no idea because I don't use WebEx. And she'd say, hey, I've started using Teams because some of our customers will invite me to a Teams meeting, and I really like this. I really like persistent chat. I really like these different features that we're getting. And then lo and behold, the company is moving to Teams, which I am ecstatic about. Other folks from the Teams community that you should be aware of are Natalie and Nicole from the Microsoft stores in Florida. Natalie and Nicole, when the Microsoft stores were somewhere you could actually show up in person, one worked in the Mall at Millennia store as an assistant manager, and the other worked in, I believe, community events, training manager at the, whatever the other Florida mall was in Orlando, and I don't remember the name. Is it just Florida Mall? Anybody know? Yeah, it's Florida Mall and Mall at Millennia. And they both had these Microsoft stores, and Natalie and Nicole were two people that I met in doing work at both stores. And I had to do a double take because didn't I just meet you at the other store? No, that's my twin sister. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Has anybody seen the Office 365 versus Office, put a year after it, comparison videos that they made with identical twins? Search that on YouTube, and you'll find people that were challenged with their identical twin to maybe use Excel. One was using 2019 at the time. One was using Excel from Office 365, getting the latest and greatest capabilities. And they gave them both a challenge in either writing their resume or finding capitals of different countries, states, whatever. And the person with the Office 365 new features could do things much quicker than the person that was stuck with the feature set of a particular version of Office. And so I've asked Natalie and Nicole, we haven't gotten around to it, but we're talking about doing one of those and updating some of that, giving one of them maybe the, hey, what can you do with the latest version of Office versus something that's come out with the new versions. The translation that we're doing here in PowerPoint, PowerPoint has added a new feature called Presentation Coach. Has anybody here, show of hands, used Presentation Coach? Excellent, almost everybody's hand went up for that. That's awesome because it helps you even if you have those crutch words, you don't use inclusive language, you have other types of things you want to clean up before giving a presentation like this. It allows you to turn it on and listen to what you're presenting and find out what your, it's 114 to get back to this slide, what your issues are from a standpoint of presenting. A couple other people I'll highlight. Anybody met Jamie Laporte? Jamie's awesome. And she came out with this content that every time I would repost and give her credit, would hit thousands of people viewing it on both LinkedIn and Twitter for me. And I thought, I wonder if LinkedIn provides Jamie all these statistics about how popular her content is. Whether I reshare it from her or I post it as kind of mine but give her credit. So I upload the picture or the graphic, and then I put something in it and I say, see Jamie, this is her graphic, but I think it's really helpful. What happens on LinkedIn is if you share something and it's not that popular, but somebody that's super popular picks it up, comments on it, if they comment on it, the traffic that might be drawn to your profile should be reflected in your views. But if somebody more popular than you on LinkedIn reshares it, you lose all the stats about how many times this was viewed, how many times was this reshared, etc. And so at the time, Jamie had awesome infographics to choose from, like the reasons why the new Office 365 feature is disabled from your IT department in a bingo game, and helping email addicts adjust to Microsoft Teams. And anytime, like I said, I shared these, my statistics just went off the chart. I had met Jamie, so I reached out to her to say, hey, FYI, these are pretty darn popular. You might want to be aware of that. And I reposted these internal to Microsoft as a full-time employee for others to choose to repost. Guess how many, just rough, people at Microsoft reposted her content?
20,000.
Less. But you're not even in the range of the amount of views that all those people calculated. It was around 500 employees. Each time I'd post it, you'd get 500 people either posting it, scheduling it. We had all these functions in something called LinkedIn Elevate as employees. So I didn't have to go to the trouble of doing my LinkedIn posts. I could pick them up, choose when they were posted, schedule them a week out, and then I could see how they were performing, how many people found it interesting. I was able to do this for Jamie and tell her the cumulative views of your content are in the millions of reshares, people commenting, the interaction that you have generated. And that was something that I provided to Jamie that I don't know if she would have been able to figure out without something like that tool at Microsoft. She already knew it was popular from her blog and the people that picked things up from her. Give me a number between 115 and about 300, and we'll go to that slide. 200. 200, enter. Everybody knows this guy, right? What I did with this slide deck, which I will make publicly available, is every single slide has a hyperlink to the person's LinkedIn profile. So if you already know the person, it's not going to do you a lot of good because you might have already connected, you might already know where they are on LinkedIn. But if there are names like Jamie that you weren't aware of, you can just click right into the slide and you're sitting on that person's LinkedIn profile. So Sherry challenged me for people she didn't know in the community. How many folks know Brian Zabricki? Hopefully no one, because I wanted to make sure Sherry left with at least one person that we don't mutually know, because our paths cross in a lot of different ways or overlap in a lot of different ways. And Sherry, quite honestly, has introduced me to more people that I didn't know this week than I have gotten from probably anyone else at this conference. Sherry is a perfect connector of different people and does a great job of just sharing people like Richard and introducing me to the partners out in the booths. So I got up to about 300 slides just through a lot of your work, Sherry. Thank you so much. Brian works as the Director of Marketing for United Training. He was at New Horizons before that. He spent a little time, I believe, over at Directions Training in the Chicago area. He's a Chicago guy, and he is absolutely hilarious. You should not only connect with him on LinkedIn, but you should say, Dan Ray said I should connect with you on Facebook because his posts are hilarious. He's just got a great personality. He knows a lot about teams. He knows a lot about training, and he's in charge of marketing for United Training. And United Training, I haven't talked to him about if it changed, but United Training was a consortium of different training companies that were geographically based, so that Centrique Training in Kansas City and down a little southwest of me, and IMG, the Information Management Group, where I started as a trainer in Chicago, and other training companies could come together to say, hey, we offer training throughout the United States without having an entire US presence. So it was an opportunity where I didn't compete with you and you don't compete with me, to look at ways to hand off those opportunities, maybe subcontract, whatever. And I'm not sure if their business model has changed dramatically. We talked about Eva. Anybody know Neil Sly? Sherry, I knew this was going to happen. You're going to learn a couple people, but we're going to have a lot of people that overlap. But I think your name was the only one that came up. Can I, where's the cube? Did I hand the cube to somebody? Awesome. Sherry, do you want to talk about Neil?
So Neil is in the MCT community, and when I first met him, he's a tech guy. He's not usually in my space, which is productivity. And then I had posted some Twitter or Facebook or something about, getting my CIE on this week, and he ended up being the person that he got hired by Microsoft and was in charge of the CIEs, the customer immersion experience, internally. So he's like, well, what are you doing with CIE? I'm like, what are you doing with CIE? I've been doing it for 10 years. So yeah, Neil's amazing and very knowledgeable. And again, one of those funny guys. He's just great to hang out with. But yeah, getting involved in the community, that's how you meet the people. Yeah. And cross community now, so. Absolutely.
Stephen, I'm putting you up on the big screen too here in case you want to comment on any of these folks. Stephen, have you met Russ Christie? Or are there any?
No, but there are so many folks that I can think of, and I think it really depends on what are you trying to achieve. Are you looking for a job? Are you looking for information? Are you working with customers and looking for an inside track? Are you looking to learn tips and tricks? I think the most important thing is before you go seek out these people, know what you want from the relationship and what you can bring to the relationship. Hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast or a webcast, or I do a blog or whatever that is. But I think understanding what the give gets are of any relationship is so important, and one of those things to go into before you try to connect with someone on LinkedIn. It's, hey, I saw you, I do this, or I'm really looking to learn more about this, and can I talk to you about this? It's really great, rather than just, hey, I want to connect with you with no reason, nothing like that, because I actually say no to that. But if there is a point and a purpose and an opportunity, that's great. I had a guest of mine on my show. I do a show called Inside Microsoft Teams, and I had a gentleman from Cargill reach out. And he said, hey, I saw your show. I was wondering if you could tell me some really good resources for internal training of teams, because I have a big meeting coming up. And I reached back out to him and said, tell me more. And when he told me more, I'm like, I'll come on. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'll join your team meeting and I'll do an hour's worth of team training and answer questions. And it grew from there, and he became a guest on my show, and we've become friends. So I think knowing what you're looking for, and I said to him, hey, if I do this, would you be willing to be on my show? And he said, yeah. So there were give and gets, and I think that's a really important part of networking, is understanding that and having a good view on that.
Yeah, Sherry?
Yeah, and to build on what you said, Stephen, you and I met through the MCTV community too. I wore my booth shirt from Ignite there yesterday. I love, it's my favorite shirt.
Awesome.
But the knowing how they communicate, because you're best through Twitter, you don't really do LinkedIn. So it's not just that you connect with them, but the best way to connect with them, right?
That's a great
point. So if you don't get an answer through LinkedIn, don't take it personally. Maybe they're Twitter people, or maybe they're Instagram people, or whatever, right? Am I fair in saying that? You always say, get me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's understanding how they like to communicate, and that I think is also a really good point. And helping to amplify what they're talking about. I love it when people retweet my stuff and then they're like asking a question, but they've been retweeting me for a while. I'm like, absolutely, I'll make time for you. Here, and then I'll DM them. Here's my private address at work, email me. So absolutely, I think that's a great way to do it. Just be respectful, but I think you'll be amazed that you can reach out to people who you would never think would respond back to you, and they will. And the only thing you have to lose is just giving it a try. I can't tell how many times people go, you're Stephen Rose, you're willing to get on a call with me? And I'm like, yeah, I think you have a great question. I'd like to learn more about what you do and how you do it. So let's chat. That's part of what I try to seek out. So don't be afraid to walk up to somebody, but as always, be respectful of their time and what's going on and what they're doing. That's it.
Excellent. Anybody know Jim Lamb? This should be not new to you, Sherry. Awesome, I did it again.
Well,
So
I don't
Jim
see his
Lamb,
face, though.
what's that?
I don't know what his face looks like.
Yeah, I don't think he's a active LinkedIn user, because one, I can see has 158 connections. And the second thing I can tell is he doesn't have a photo, because we're first degree connected. He accepted my invitation. Jim worked for a company that I did training for, and he's one of those champions that got on and said, yeah, we're doing a lot with teams, and we have templates, and we have best practices that we've built about channel names and use and how to move things from how we used to do things into teams. And I said, great, because I think your users are going to find it much more valuable to hear from you than to hear from me about how you do your business. And Jim and I got to talking, and Jim said, yeah, I have a neighbor that works for Microsoft. And I thought, yeah, I probably have no clue who that person is, because there are thousands of people that work at Microsoft. He said, yeah, she's got a first name. It's Caruana something. And I said, there is no way your neighbor is Caruana Gatimu. He said, yeah, that's her name. I see her and her husband out sometimes in the neighborhood. And go figure, training and just a side conversation with a Teams expert, and I discover that. So Jim's another one of those people. maybe kind of hidden, but somebody I would suggest you connect with. Perla Ramirez is the person that I mentioned that works at Crow, and she's in charge of change management and overseeing that project at Crow. And she went out on the Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist group, about 500 people, and had questions about, hey, I'm new to this. What are some suggestions you have? And it just so happens that I know through my wife, somebody who works at Crow and is involved in training and organizational change management. And I hooked her up with Art, a good friend that I know through my wife, and they had a meeting scheduled a week or two ago. So it's those kind of connections that once you know more people, you can make for others. And likewise, that's a connection now that I have into Crow and into their change management and what they might be doing from a standpoint of their community. I'm assuming you don't know Perla, right? And I'm assuming you do know Michael. How many folks know Michael Blumenthal? At least a couple people. Michael's one of those people that from the MVP community is passionate about connecting with others. And he's from the Chicagoland area. We started a Microsoft Midwest Toastmasters. And Michael, through Yammer or some internal post, reached out and said, hey, can I get involved with this group? And was our first competent communicator through our Microsoft chapter of Toastmasters. He's awesome. And from a standpoint of teams and his knowledge at Aon, the building that Microsoft's office in Chicago downtown was in, still is, but nobody's there, is somebody that I connected with and have stayed both personal and professional friends with since. Sherry, have you ever met Ed Gallagher? How'd you meet Ed? You want to tell the story? And Stephen, I think you have a story too. So
I'll let
Sherry
Stephen
go
tell.
first.
I've seen his face, and I think it was at a Microsoft marketing event. Yeah.
Stephen, do you have a relationship with Ed?
Yeah, for many years. Whenever I would be doing the old Springboard tours and things like that, whenever we'd come from Chicago, Ed was always there, huge, just one of those guys that would walk to the ends of the planet for someone that he barely knows and was always willing to help and share advice, but just a super, super nice guy. And I can't say enough really nice things about Ed Gallagher. I'm one of those people who, if you have a problem or a question and Ed can prioritize it, he will. He's just that type of person.
I twisted his arm. He became our president for Toastmasters in the Midwest for probably 2 years. And we finally agreed to just take it and think about maybe redoing it, calling it Microsoft Speakers Club or something else. Because many of the people had a passion for the Microsoft and the community aspects, but weren't necessarily, I need to get over a fear of public speaking, or I need to get better at public speaking. Most of us were public speakers. So the thought was, why do we need the overhead of Toastmasters if really all our focus is connecting and speaking and polishing presentations we have to give different places? Sherry, do you know Scott Brewster?
That's his face.
He's a SharePoint user group. He runs a SharePoint user group out in Virginia or Washington, D.C., so you might know him from that.
Yeah, he, when we did the CIEs in Reston, he came and was a SME or a technical specialist or something.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He's kind of government focused and just good guy. Had me on as a speaker. I don't remember, I think this was the first place I did the People You Should Know session. So it was an opportunity to kind of start somewhere and then build from there. How are we doing on time here? We've got, it looks like 13 minutes left. Anybody else have questions or particular focus areas that you would like to see if I have connections with or suggestions of people you can reach out to? Microsoft, partners. Richard? You want to throw them the,
So, on occasion, it does happen that organizations will leave Microsoft. Cover your ears. But it can happen, right? And there's a graceful, I think, exit strategy that can help a lot of customers to understand what that looks like. What can you take from a Teams implementation or from SharePoint or as you're exiting the Microsoft realm? Do you have any connections with folks that maybe have successfully navigated those waters, and particularly, for warnings about the things you would lose, right? What are the gotchas of if you were to leave your Microsoft tenant today and go, say, to some other suite that's out there, what would it cost you? Do you have any?
yeah. So, good question. I have a contact that I went to high school with. It's not the supermodel, Sherry. It's somebody different. And he just so happened to form an IT company in DeKalb, Illinois. And he just so happened to run for mayor. And he's now the mayor of DeKalb, Illinois. Cohen Barnes, and I can hook you up with his contact information, runs, I'll call it kind of a small to medium Microsoft consultancy, managed service provider business in the northern Illinois area. They're expanding. And he is somebody that has navigated some of those waters with his customers. Sharon Weaver told me the RDs, the MVP RD community might be another one to think about looking at, where they have cross-platform competitive knowledge, that type of thing. Stephen, any other thoughts there on?
Not really. I think that that's a long and deep discussion on what the cost is. I think it depends on what you've implemented and how you've done it, but you're asking the right question, and I think that is certainly a good place to start, because I know a lot of folks who don't. They look at the cost savings, but they don't look at what it costs to get out of one and move to another. So I think that's pretty savvy.
Even just moving from one 365 tenant to another is a lot of difference.
True, absolutely true.
We're about to go through all that.
Yeah. Yep.
We're gonna lose a lot of content.
Yeah.
Well, and to that, I don't know if this is being recorded or whatever, but the point there was migrating in between tenants even is a challenge, and a lot of our clients are doing that, right? They'll go from commercial and then figure out, oops, I should be in the DoD space, I should be on a GovCloud, or or it's nonprofit. We got to flip it out to nonprofit. Yeah, mergers and acquisition, divestitures. Yeah, divestitures are also really hard to carve out a portion of the business.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
From a government perspective, Scott Brewster would be a good place to start. Joe Barnett and I met through a project that we did for Selena Huck. Selena and I are working on a project now on the West Coast for an education customer. Met her through a subcontract with a company. She moved on to another company, reached out to me, said, hey, do you think you can do this? And I said, if you give me a chance, I'm certain we can make this happen and work around my training schedule. And it's just so happens that it's going to work with the slower time from a training perspective to ramp up on that deliverable from a project perspective. So Selena would be a good person. She's worked a lot of these. She's an awesome project manager, knows all the ins and outs there, is teaching me a lot there. And then Joseph Barnett would be somebody to reach out to from a DoD perspective. Do you know Ricardo Wilkins by any chance?
No.
Ricardo is a Microsoft employee that does a Cute for Teams office hours every Friday and is GCC government focused from a Teams perspective. So he's another person to look up. Anybody else?
There were two guys who speak. Two guys from Microsoft from the GCC space. Doug and I wrote their names down. There were two gentlemen here. So look through the attendee list, and we had the same connections. Like their customers they support were the ones that I was supporting. So yeah. Oh, see if I can remember their name.
Uh-oh. Okay,
There we
Marcos. So, kind of on the notion, or maybe it goes hand in hand with GovSpace, oftentimes for our clients is security and compliance, and the next steps for security and compliance. Do you have any context, one, for really good in the security and compliance centers? Two, what about regulatory? I mean, there's all kinds of different regulatory stuff that's out there. Could be GDPR, could be California, could be ITAR or NIST 82. What, I mean, do you have any contexts that are really good at regulatory ruling and understanding?
Yeah, so a couple people I can highlight there. I'm just looking through and seeing if I can spot their slides here. If not, I'll mention their names. Steve Adams runs a consultancy called Productive, spelled a little differently. But Stephen Adams and I both had a Microsoft history, connected afterwards, and he's focused in a lot of that security and compliance center. And typically, their model is to go through partners and spin up the partners. But he'd be a good resource to maybe start with. Who's focused on this space? Who's coming up to speed? Microsoft's adding a bunch of MVPs in that space too. So, Stephen, do you know if there's a particular category in MVP
Not
for security and compliance?
No, well, it's part of our M365, but there is going to be a security, compliance, and governance one that's being discussed, but it's different. There's one for Azure, there's one for M365, so there's some different areas. Another guy to take a look at is a Microsoft employee named John Grushek, who leads Teams Security and Compliance, also an ex-Chicago guy. He'll be putting out blogs and having some sessions at Ignite, and a really great guy to know, and he's on my team. So if you have questions for him, I'm happy to connect you.
Stephen, there's 301 that I need to add because I don't think I have
Okay.
that in this deck.
John's a good guy, and I'm happy to connect people to him.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay.
How about Power BI administration?
Power BI administration. So I'm not sure if she's a Power BI administrator, but I know Jackie Chiatti from the Atlanta, Georgia area is super passionate about Power BI. And
Ben
she's a great
Summers.
connector. Okay, Ed Summers, perfect.
Ben Summers.
Ben Summers, okay.
He's right around the corner from me, and he is our Power BI lead and expert and great guy. I encourage you to check out his blog. He's got a webcast and is always open to chatting with people.
Good, maybe you can fix my problem. I'm trying to create an inventory of all of our dashboards and all of our reports ahead of our migrations, and the Power BI PowerShell does not give you the owner of the reports. Oh, I caught it.
So I'm working on Power BI administration and creating a inventory of all of our dashboards and reports with the URLs, who owns them, so that I can then interview them ahead of our migration to find out if they're still valid or not. The PowerShell for it does not give you the owner. It gives you the URL and the name of it and the ID.
Okay.
I've got multiple people at Microsoft also trying to figure it out. It's like a black hole of information.
So the other benefit to this when I did it the old way was I can search for names like Jackie, if I spell it right. I did spell it right, so she must not be in here. I thought I put her in this deck. Good idea. Yeah, she might not be in here. 302. But she's Power BI focused and even works with how Teams interacts with Power BI. So she may have been lost in the version 1, version 2, version 3. So thanks a lot for being here. If you have questions for Swedish Chef, he's in the back. And Swedish Chef, any parting thoughts for the audience here? I'm sure we have to get the phone unlocked to find the Swedish to English translation. Share the PowerPoint. There, hey, look at that. Magdalena Freeman, everyone.
Well, thanks for letting me join, Dan. I got to
Thank you
run to
so
another
much.
meeting, but this was awesome. Yeah, and if folks are always welcome to connect with me at Stephen L. Rose on Twitter, and if you're looking to meet other people, I'm happy to connect them. Great
I
session.
appreciate it. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
You too, my friend. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.